All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans, sponsored by Lion Bowl Media. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, what really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Our very special guest and featured titan for today's episode, I'm super honored and excited, Jim Remley. Jim, all the way from Oregon. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely my pleasure to be here, Greg. You are a living legend in the industry already. You interviewed so many top professionals. I feel honored to be here in your studio with you today. So,
oh gosh, it's truly the honor and pleasure is all mine. I appreciate the kind words, Jim. But you are among so many incredible people as of yourself, and you've done so many amazing things throughout your career. And I definitely want to touch on that and get everybody out there in the Titan Nation, anybody who's tuning in live with us or after the fact listening, and really just to get to know you as a man, as a professional in your journey, and then some incredible takeaways along the way too, Jim.
Absolutely.
So, but I guess without further ado, let's jump into the first question, which is really looking at it from a standpoint of telling everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what got you into the business, and what brings you to where you are to today, Jim.
Okay, I'm going to make this a short story, not a long one, because I think backstories can be boring, but I want to make it very interesting, and we want to give you a lot of great nuggets today.
Anywhere you go, Jim, I'm there.
Yeah. So I got in the real estate business when I was 19. My buddy and I worked in a lumber mill. I was a college dropout and went to work in a lumber mill thinking I was making a lot of money. I was making $11 an hour back then.
Wow.
And so my buddy says, let's get a real estate license. His dad owned a real estate company. I said, okay, let's do it. So I got my license. He didn't finish, and I didn't go to work for his dad. Wow. I went to work for the first place I drove by, which happened to be a Century 21 office at the time.
Okay.
Walked in, said, are you hiring? They said, you're in luck. We're hiring.
Good timing, Jim.
Yeah. So I went back, quit my job. I got in the real estate business. But like a lot of agents, I struggled for the first 6 months. I wasn't a rock star. And I think when you talk to a lot of people that have been successful in this business, they're not immediately successful. We like to think that they are, but they're not, right? There's a struggle there. And so for my first 6 months, I was really, really kind of scraping it together and trying to figure it out. And what I went into the business with, I had no money. I had $1,500 and I was driving a Chevy Citation. Wow. And I didn't even have enough money to buy the gold coat. I was so proud of myself when I finally bought that mustard yellow coat that I wore proudly every single day coming into the office.
Absolutely.
But what I did do right is back in that day, 32 years ago, don't let that scare you because I'm going to give you relevant data today. But 32 years ago, there wasn't what we have today. There's no podcast. There's no internet. There was just reading books and going to live seminars and buying the tapes. And I did all of that. Every single event I could get my hands on, I would drive to Portland. I would drive to Eugene, hundreds of miles away, attend every single thing I could and just soak it all in. And I went outside the industry. I listened to guys like Tommy Hopkins, who was huge in the day back then, and all the Zig Ziglars of the world. And I just took it all in. And then I started applying it in my business. And within the next year, I was able to take 150 listings, become listed in the top 1% of agents in the country. And then I just started to grow from there. At 24, I opened my first company. Wow. And then I grew that with a partner to 17 offices. And then we sold that, really got lucky, sold it in 2006, right before the crash. And no golden, no secret. I just got lucky, honestly.
Timing.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I took a few years to teach for NAR. So I taught a lot of the designation programs for NAR, wrote 3 books. And then I got recruited to come down and run the company I'm sitting in today. So ended up becoming an owner in this company. We grew from 39 agents. Now we have 190 agents in 3 offices, doing $1 billion in sales in a population base of 80,000. So if any brokerage owners out there or agents that are in small towns, just keep in mind that, the market is not your determinant of how successful you can be. I've got agents here that are doing $100 million, $60 million, $70 million in business. Wow. So it's all in your approach to the business and not putting a ceiling on your success, right? So that's kind of where that's a very short story of how I got to where I'm at today.
Jim, but there is so much into that lineage and talking about that. I want to back up just at the very beginning at 19 years of age, because I think this is going to resonate with so many people who are out there that I think put barriers or downplay, now's not the right time for me. And I'm not a believer and there was ever a right time. 19 years of age, what were you thinking about real estate? Why from the lumber mill to, the real estate office? What was in your head when you made that decision?
Well, I think we have to identify what our why is, right? So for me, my why at that point was opportunity. I didn't graduate college. I knew that was not going to happen for me.
Yeah.
And I grew up poor. I had the designation that Warren Buffett talks about, which is the best designation any of us can have, which is to be poor, smart, and driven, the PSD designation.
Wow. Love that.
If you're poor, smart, and driven, you can just about accomplish anything. Beautiful. So coming from that really humble kind of beginning, I wanted to go out and be somebody that my family wasn't. I wanted to be a homeowner. I wanted to create, generational wealth for myself and my family. And I wanted freedom. I didn't want to have to work for the man, so that's what was really the catalyst for me going to work and really working hard. I will tell you, a life changer for me was when I was 16. Okay. I read Tommy Hopkins' book, Awaken the Giant Within, and it changed my life. Okay. I absolutely underlined it. I read it 4 or 5 times. And he talked about limiting beliefs and, those kinds of things. And when you grow up poor, you do end up with some limiting beliefs.
Sure.
And when you start to look at those and analyze those and shatter those, and you think, what is really possible for me in my life? That's what really started me down that road.
I mean, Jim, absolutely incredible. And again, I can't describe to anybody enough how important it is to know the background of the story, because everybody has such a different walk of life and a different carry up into where they go. And there's no excuses about putting in the time and the effort, surrounding yourself with great people, knowledge, and then putting in the work. And I do know that you have worked with and continue to work with some of the best and brightest minds in the real estate world with that, taking all of your knowledge and applying that, not just to the markets, the operations side, obviously team and growth through the agent side, through brokerage, but then also to educating outside of it through real estate professionals. So I do know that I want to know a little bit more about the story about eReal Estate Coach and how that came about and what's that look like today, I guess.
So what happened with the genesis of eReal Estate Coach was that I've always been passionate about teaching. That's why I worked for NAR for 10 years and taught all around the country, like you.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I started growing this company, we took it from 39 agents to 190 agents, and we started creating this amazing success with individual agents. If you're a brokerage owner, the way you measure yourself, and there's only one measurement that matters. The only measurement that matters in your company is per agent productivity. Everything else is meaningless. So when you look at per agent productivity, if you're measuring it, how well are you doing compared to your area, but also the country? And so we quickly got recognized as being one of the top in the country. In fact, we're in the Real Trends top 500. I think we're listed like at 350, but we're competing against companies in New York and LA and Atlanta and all the big cities in the country. Right. I mean, I'm in a little town in Medford, Oregon. You've never heard of it, right? And I'm competing at this level. So people started saying, Jim, how are you taking these agents from where they normally would be to what they're able to accomplish?
Yeah.
And I want to train my agents to do the same thing. So we built eReal Estate Coach based on our own training program, my training program with my own agents, so they could come in and tap into that same level of resource. And we also made it super affordable so that any agent in the country can just tap into it, and they don't have to write, their mortgage payment to make coaching work for them. So that was kind of my starting point. It's just grown from there.
And again, I love the fact that you're able to help anybody and everybody through their walk of life through real estate, and doesn't matter if they're at the beginning or they're a seasoned pro. There's something to be learned. There's something to grow amongst that, and the fact that you're able to help people from all over it's inspiring. And again, it's I love that you're making it into the statement. It's not your mortgage payment, right? This education, this knowledge should be freely given. And again, the high tide raises all ships. And again, Jim, that's just an inspiration for anybody out there. And there's so many options, and anybody who's tuning into this now thinking, oh gosh, well, what's Jim got over everybody else? I mean, if you haven't understood that he's a true practitioner and he's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, there's so many coaches or trainers that they're more into the theory, but not the application, right? The day in, day out minutia. And you have it from so many different angles, Jim, which is beautiful to me. And we're going to have links in the comments down below and the show notes so you can really connect. But what is that website? Is it erealestatecoach.com? Do I have that right?
That's
Jim?
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say that for audio too, but we'll have it in the show notes as well. But you also have a podcast, and from a podcaster to a podcaster, we've got to talk about that because I think that's important. Anybody who's tuning in, you're welcome by bringing Jim on because you have more great content to consume. So let's talk about your podcast for a little bit, Jim. I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, well, I started my podcast. We're not at your level. We started our podcast about a year ago.
Wow, love it.
I think we're 32 episodes in. I try to bring in some great. I try to bring in a mix of high-level speakers, and we've had some amazing people on there. Joshua Smith's been on. We've had Ricky Carruth was recently on. Beautiful. So, Ricky, he crushed it. We've had Greg McDaniel on. So we've had some high-level people on there that have just done amazing and really educated the audience. But then we try to bring in some agent-level things where we just have an agent that's just up and coming, that's crushing it. We want to know boots on the ground, what's working, what's not working, and it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it. We spend a lot of time just digging deep and getting into the granular level like you do.
I love that. I love it. And so what's the podcast name, and then how frequently are they released? I guess, is there a schedule that people
we're doing about a podcast every 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
So not at your level, but we're doing, the podcast name is Real Estate Coach with Jim Remley.
Love it.
If you go find it, you can find it anywhere.
I will be putting it down in the comments below in the show notes. Subscribe, tune in. This man is no joke. Very, very serious. I love it. And so when it comes down to that, Jim, because you have so much knowledge, I know we can't tap into everything. I mean, this episode is just one episode. But as always, I encourage everybody, if something sticks out to you about Jim or what he says or a story and everything he's about to share here pretty soon, reach out to him, follow him on social media, jump on the website. All the information we're going to be talking about is there on erealestatecoach.com. But Jim, the second question really looking into is the tactical side, the applicable side for people tuning in. They want to learn from the best and the brightest. They want to learn from the Titans. So if you could go back and look through your career, 30 plus year career, which I love that, and pick or choose one or two things that really stood out, you really saw growth, the needle moving in a positive way for your business from any angle, because you have so many different, from team lead, managing broker, individual producer, coach. I mean, you could hit it from so many different spots. What advice would you give anybody watching or listening?
Well, the first piece of advice is recognize early, which we've all talked about ad nauseum, which is your sphere of influence is going to drive your ultimate success. But I'm going to get past that, but I want to stop on this for just a second, because I'm going to give you a really fast coaching nugget that I give all my coaching students, which is this, that when we are talking about your production, and I said, okay, Greg, I'm not asking this as a rhetorical question.
Gotcha.
Greg, how many deals have you closed in the last 12 months? And you give me a number. Let's say it's 20. Let's say it's 20. And a lot of your listeners will be like, yeah, it's around 20. I would probably say to you, then I'm going to guess that your sphere of influence is somewhere between 180 and 220. Is that right? 90% of the time I'll be right on the money, because there's a 10-to-1 ratio with your sphere. If you have 10 people in your sphere, you're going to average one closed sale, assuming you're doing the work behind the sphere. But here's what's happening for so many agents. So many agents have a 100-person sphere or an 80-person sphere, and they're expecting to close 50 transactions. When they do their goals, like this is the goal setting, time of the year. People start saying, I want to do 50 transactions. Those numbers don't equate. You can't get to 50 transactions with an 80-person sphere or a 100-person sphere. The sphere, what you need to look at it as, is what's under the hood of your business. So right now you're basically driving a Honda Civic and you want Ferrari-like performance. In order to get a Ferrari-like performance, in order to get there, we got to use the 10-to-1 ratio. You want 50 closings, you have to have 500 people in your sphere, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So then the question mark is, I'm a new agent. I'm 19 years old, like I was 32 years ago. I don't have 500 people. Like, what the freak am I going to do? Like, how am I going to make that happen? Right. So, and I don't, when I was 19, none of my peers are buying a house. None of my peers are selling a house. Like normally, if you're 40 or 50, like I am today, all my peers are buying and selling houses and investments. And so it's so much easier. When you're younger, what do you do? Okay. Or at any age, really, you want to build your sphere. Here's the two of the things that I did early in my career that crushed for me. I focused 1,000% on for sale by owners, and I dominated that market. So I own the for sale by owner market. in my community, and I've taken hundreds and hundreds of for sale by owner listings. Everybody gets afraid of for sale by owners, that they're so scary. They're the easiest thing in the world to close when you know how to do it right. I'll give you 3 points on this real quick.
Yes, please.
Ready? All right. So I learned this myself from someone else attending a seminar, and he said, I use the stop, drop, and knock method, Jim. I said, well, what does that mean? He says, most agents, when they see a for sale by owner sign, they just keep driving, and they say to themselves they're going to come back, but they never do. Right. So you got to stop. You got to drop what you're doing. You got to go knock on the door. And that's what I started doing. Stop, drop, and knock. And then it's like, what's the script? Everybody's all hung up on scripts. Like, what's the script? First of all, the script doesn't matter as much as you think it does. Most of it is you just being in front of them. But what I would say always was, hey, listen, I noticed your sign, and it could be a phone call too. Noticed your sign this morning, driving by, and I thought I'd just stop real quick. I know you're probably not ready for me to come in your house right now, but my name is Jim Remley. I'm with ABC Real Estate. And I want to let you know, I'm not here to ask for your listing. And I'm not gonna go down that road with you. I respect your decision to sell on your own, and I'm not gonna ask for your listing. But I do have a quick question. If I do run into a buyer that would fit your home, would there be a possibility for me to show it? And people would say, I don't know, maybe. Great. If you could just let me have 5 minutes to walk through the house, that'd be amazing. So they'd schedule that because they're meeting me at the door. It's much harder to say no at the door, right?
Sure.
So then I would make the meeting, come back, take a tour of the property. As I'm walking through, I'm building rapport. Why, when, where, why are you selling? When are you moving? What have you done to the house? Those things. Building rapport. But before I leave, I say, now listen, I promise you I wasn't going to ask you for your listing, and I'm not. But I do have a quick question for you, Greg. And the question I have for you is, if you're not successful selling on your own, do you think at any point you might work with a realtor? And most people would say, maybe. And I'd say, well, how long do you think you might give it? Would you give it like 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years?
Wow.
And people would laugh because I would always make a joke. Yeah. And they would say, normally they'd say, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I said, great. Do you mind if I just touch base with you from time to time? I'm going to keep it in the back of my mind for any of my buyers, and I'm going to try to show it. I will try to sell it. And if I can just keep in contact with you every week and just kind of give you an update of what's happening, you can tell me if the house is still available. Would that be cool? They say yes. Now I'm with them every week until they list with me. Wow. And 9 times out of 10, I get the listing. People have to understand 92% of for sale by owners will list with a realtor. 92%. Wow. It's not my numbers. That's NAR's most recent numbers.
Huge.
So that was my opportunity when I started. So that was one simple thing, but it did work.
Huge, Jim.
I will tell you that today when I'm coaching agents, we're now teaching them to text. It's a cold texting FSBOs.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a quick tactical tip on that. So we all have cell phones, right? So one thing here is if I call a for sale owner, they may not answer because a lot of people don't answer their phone anymore.
Right.
They may not answer their door either. So I'm going to text to get through those barriers. But what I'm going to text is a video. I'm going to do a quick video. Hey, just drove by your house this morning. So I have it for sale by owner. My name is Jim Remley with ABC Real Estate. Just wondering, and I go to the same script. Yeah. I send them a video text. Could be through BombBomb if you're using that. Could be through your phone, whatever you want to do. Now imagine I make that agnostic. Now what I mean by agnostic is not specific to the house.
Sure.
So I say, hey, this is Jim Remley. I noticed you had a for sale by owner, ad up this morning. Just wanted to know if it would be an opportunity for me to show the house. Same script. But now I give it to my assistant. Right. Or I give it to some kid in the office. Maybe it's my son who I'm paying $1 per appointment to or $10 per appointment to. And every morning, all he does is he gets up in the morning, checks Craigslist, checks Facebook Marketplace, checks the local sites, and sends that video to anybody who's listed their phone number. Looks like it comes from me, and it sets the appointment, right? So that's like a super quick tactical thing. I had Chatty Bazzi on my podcast, and Chatty's a great guy out of Southern California.
Love it.
He trained his agents to do the same thing with texting. He had one agent do 87 texts in a weekend in Southern California. They got 10 responses back. 5 ended up in appointments, 2 listed their property, and they got 2 more buyer referrals. That was from 87 texts.
Unreal.
So we say, wow, 87 texts. Well, what else are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
You closing deals every day? What are you doing, right? So that was one example. And my other thing for me, which was really my claim to fame, was quick story on this, but when I started in the business, I'm so old that the county records were on microfiche. They weren't even on computers yet.
So good.
So I decided that I was going to start doing absentee mailings, but I didn't have the records. There's no way to do a mailing.
Wow.
So I had an old 356 computer. I hired an assistant. I bought a microfiche machine, bought all the county records, sat her up, and she would do from one record to the other, transferring the entire county database onto my computer.
Wow.
So we transferred 68,000 records onto our computer, sorted by absentee owners, and we're the first team in the county to have an absentee owner list, and then started doing mailings to absentee owners. Absentee owners to this day are a massive opportunity for every agent, and every agent should be doing absentee owners. Absentee owners by default have a much higher response rate than just a traditional farming letter, although traditional farming works too.
Sure.
But with these absentee owners, they are already emotionally disconnected because they moved away. They're renting the property, and they have no connection to a realtor locally. They don't know any realtors in the market. So absolutely crushed with absentee owners. I mean, that was a big market for us for years. So those are two things I did early that really helped launch my career.
But Jim, what's incredible about that is there's so much forward thinking into the full process of follow-up and connecting and really having that human emotion and touch point to it. So, as you're talking about the stop, drop, and knock, I mean, when you're just listening to that aspect, people really getting involved in the communities that they serve and reaching out physically. But the barriers of entry, as you mentioned, phone calls and even answering the door, you're really looking at it and saying, okay, well, this is working in certain segments, certain markets for this time. How can we adapt? How can we make it better? How can we streamline this and really be as effective as possible? I love the fact that you really didn't take the no for an answer, or the simple, hey, well, no one's been doing this in our market back then. So you bought the equipment, you started doing this by hand. It's that old adage, the first person through the wall tends to get bloodied. However, the trailblazers and the mavericks are the ones who are shaping the market and shaping and building the standards for everybody. And Jim, just from this short conversation, I can tell that you're just over the moon and above what you're doing and setting that standard very, very high for real estate professionals, which I love that. And, you're really basing it off of actionable items and just that quick piece of advice about texting the video and really getting through. There's so much to that. If everybody out there just took that one piece and applied it, you're going to grow your revenue.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's just one little piece of advice from Jim, just off the top of his head. But that's what's so incredible about following, the top professionals and people who have been there, done that. And Jim, the fact that you've put this together in such a way where people can really enjoy your knowledge every day and apply that and have accountability, there's just so much to it. And I just can't thank you enough. But is there anything else that sticks out to you? I know you've given us so many, pearls of wisdom and nuggets out there, but I feel like I just want to keep picking your brain.
Absolutely. We can go for days. But
you had mentioned, but when we were in the green room just a little bit, I made a note here. So you're giving a presentation in Canada tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
And something into that, and no spoiler if anybody's going to be there and they're tuning in, just plug your ears. But with this about listings, and would you mind sharing your thoughts on that, Jim? Because I can't wait. I mean, this is great.
For sure. So the topic of that program is 5 steps to a flood of listings. So, we're all, listing hungry. The listings are definitely something we all need, but there's some great stats around listings. There's huge seller pent-up demand. And what that means is that we always talk about buyer pent-up demand, but seller pent-up demand is there's a lot of sellers that have been held back by COVID, been held back for various reasons for putting the homes on the market. But the most recent studies show that 75% of Americans believe now is a good time to sell as they watch prices rise. But more than that, a new study shows that 68% of Americans are considering selling the next 3 years. I mean, that's a massive number. You think about that when you're driving down the street and you look at every home you're driving by, and you think 68% of these are going to be on the market in the next 3 years. The question is, who's going to list them? It's going to be you or your competitor.
Right.
If you don't get in front of them and start incubating them, it's not going to be you, right? Mm-hmm. So this is like a mindset. I predict, my personal prediction is that we're going to see the biggest super cycle of listings that we've ever seen starting in 2022.
Wow.
We're going to see an amazing number of listings coming to market. So we've just gotten so used to some people might consider the new normal of a low listing inventory market. But this is a cycle. I've been in the business 32 years. This is an extended market cycle.
Right.
A lot of people would say we are 12 years into a 7-year cycle. And I agree. I mean, this is a cycle that's going to change, and it's going to start soon. Wow. We're already starting to see the signs of it. You look at listing inventories are starting to rise in a lot of places. A lot of agents are saying, wait a second, my listing's not selling in 10 minutes with multiple offers. those are things to consider. But how do we find these listings? How do we get ahead of the curve? So I'll give you a few ideas of my 5. Okay.
Oh, love it.
I'll give you a few. Number 1 is relocation.
Okay.
So I want everybody to, if you hear anything today, hear what I'm saying about relocation.
Wow.
So 1/3 of Americans have said that they plan to move after COVID ends. Now, we thought COVID was ending last year, right?
Right.
But just assume that that's a small, there's some truth to that. Maybe not a whole third are actually going to move. They're planning on moving, but maybe they won't. But I want you to think about in your own market. Here's a classic example of this. My family and I went to Park City, Utah pre-COVID, and we went to the Sundance Film Festival. It was amazing.
Ah, beautiful.
But while we were there, I was like curious. So I typed in relocation Park City. And what I found was there was one real estate company that positioned themselves around the word relocation. So one out of all the companies that serve Park City, and one agent within that company doing it. So I want you to do this and test it in your own market. And for all your listeners,
love it.
Type into Google relocation your city, then see how many realtors come up. Almost universally, I just did this in Anaheim, California. I just taught in Anaheim, California just a couple weeks ago. We did it live in Anaheim. There was almost no realtors. I mean, there was like one realtor in the first 2 pages of results.
Wow.
Now go deeper. Go to YouTube, which is the second biggest search engine in the world.
Yeah.
Type in relocation your hometown. Again, you're going to find bupkis. Normally, there's going to be very little there.
Wow.
So you have this wide open opportunity to position yourself around relocation. If you want to go deeper and you say, okay, change those words to moving to your hometown, see what comes up there. Almost the same result in most areas that I teach. So here's a few things to do in terms of relocation. I'm going to give you some tactical things. Number 1, your website's got to be SEO optimized around the word relocation, obviously. You need to start releasing videos consistently that are targeted around relocation. But on YouTube specifically, consider building a channel that is specific to your hometown, not you. It's not, you could have your own channel,
sure,
but you need to have a channel that is your hometown. So if I'm in Medford, Oregon, I should have, Medford, Oregon real estate, or living in Medford, Oregon would be an example. Now I build out videos that are all about living in Medford. Of course, I'm gonna build in and I'm gonna talk about my business, my services.
Right.
So that's one example. Here's another great example that's crushing is, and I learned this from my friend Furquan Mahmood. Furquan attended a seminar I did years ago in Portland, Oregon. And when he came in, he said, Jim, I gotta tell my story. After the seminar, he said this. I said, what is it? He said, well, I got in the real estate business 2000 when 9/11 happened. The day of 9/11, that's when he got licensed. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was practicing in Boise, Idaho, not the center at the time of cultural diversity, right? So I love my friends in Boise. I got a lot of friends there. But let's be honest, okay, it's not super cultural diverse.
For sure.
So I said, you're obviously successful, Furquan. What did you do, buddy? He said, here's what I did. I started farming realtors in other communities that I knew were moving to Boise. So he had farmed all these other realtors. And I said, how's that working? He says, I did 6 million in my first 6 months. I didn't do anything, kind of like me. My second 6 months, I did $6 million from farming other realtors. And here's a magic little tactical idea. Offer people a unique oddball referral amount, not 25%. Make it 32.33%, some crazy number that they're going to remember you with, right?
Oh, wow.
But think about that from a perspective of we're always farming neighborhoods, we're always farming, but start farming other realtors for people that are feeding your market. So there's 2 tactics under relocation right there.
Wow.
I mean, that's right. So I mean, it definitely will work. I guarantee it.
Oh, Jim, and this is just huge thought process and tactical advice. And there's so many people that, myself included, mind's blown. Just thinking about that aspect of relocation and, the pent up wave of the market that's coming through. And I think that a big issue that I find a lot of entrepreneurs, not just in real estate, but in general, is they're tend to being so busy in the daily operations that they're not being proactive. They're being more reactive. And what I'm hearing directly from you, which is absolutely brilliant, is looking at it from the standpoint, how do you get ahead of this wave? How do you position yourself today for tomorrow? And I think that is just so good advice all the way through and through. And this is for every aspect that you're mentioning in here. And I encourage everybody to do exactly what Jim said. Please type in your location and check that out. Position yourself for search engine optimization. Look at things as far as, what you're doing on social media, as platforms, as YouTube, as you mentioned, Jim. I mean, All this stuff is absolutely spot on. And I mean, gosh, this time flies every single time, Jim. And I felt like I really got to get to know you and just a little bit of your knowledge basis and everything that you have to bring to the table. I cannot wait for our next conversation, whatever that may be, my friend. This was an honor and a pleasure. Is there anything you want to closing remarks, anything like that, Jim? Anything comes to mind before we wrap it up?
Well, just to tag on what you're saying, Gary Vee, whether you follow Gary Vee or not, he had a great quote, which is, we have to have our head in the clouds and our nose in the dirt. So you have to think, certainly we have to get into the day-to-day grind of what we're doing, but we also got to get above that and start looking at the horizon. And the horizon is where the opportunity lies. So looking at what's coming and what can you do to get ahead of that curve, that's what's going to put you to the next level. Jim,
you're a true pro, my friend. I cannot thank you enough. I have to give you the official dubbing of a real estate titan. That is yours forever, my friend. It is a badge of honor. No one can ever take it away. I say every time there's no trophy or plaque, but it's in your heart, and it's yours forever, Jim. I can't thank you enough. True pro. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Everybody out there, as always, I appreciate your time, your love and support and attention. As always, if you like here doing with Real Estate Titans, don't forget to like and subscribe. You know what to do at this point. I do have to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Lion Bolt Media. If you are in real estate, you're looking on the digital end to grow and scale your real estate business, from market saturation to lead generation and conversion to transactions, please visit lionboltmedia.com. Now, on Real Estate Titans, we're live every Tuesday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody in the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.